In an observation which has been quoted very often, Mother observes whenever and wherever there was the possibility of manifesting a ray of consciousness, I was there. It spans the whole course of evolution. When Sri Aurobindo was asked, when he made a similar statement, what were you doing? He said, carrying on evolution. Now, evolution in this context does not mean only spiritual development. It means development of consciousness in any sphere of life. That is how, whether it is in art, music, warfare, political strategy, literature, poetry, yoga, religion, whatever domain of activity, the evolving consciousness gets a spurt when there are such powerful manifestations. And we discussed how the mother has played an important part. And what Sri Aurobindo says of himself, that he was carrying on evolution, seen and unseen, not always recognized, but all the same at work. Similarly, we know only those births of the mother which are prominent in history. Obviously, we do not know all. Coming and confining ourselves to her present manifestation, we observed that the Universal Mother took a long, long time to assemble the necessary ingredients for her birth. If we look at her parentage, there were many strains of tradition, of culture, of religious stamp on her ancestry. There were Hungarian elements, Portuguese, Latin European, Egyptian, Turkish, French. All these different strains at different stages have formed part of our ancestry. We do not need to go into these details. of particulars of the lives of our well-known grandmother or of her physical mother, who was on all accounts a very strong personality, highly materialistic in outlook, never believing in things of a non-physical order, a stern disciplinarian, and who wanted her children to grow up as the best in the world. As if in contrast, her father was a Turkish banker. He was a very outgoing personality with great interest in birds and animals, imaginative man, and as mother recalls, he was very fond of telling stories to his children. Mira Alfas Mira was her name. Her brother was Matteo. And he was telling them stories as if he had written them, as if he had played major part in them to impress the children. Mother's brother was a very studious type, always concerned with his studies. And Mira herself was a kind of introvert. Before we come to more details, let us note that her father, who, as I said, was a Turkish banker, he became a naturalized citizen of France before Mira was born. She was born in 1878, 21st of February, at 10:15 a.m. in the morning, and it was Thursday. Someone has pointed out, it is Mr. Setna, that there is a very interesting correlation between Sri Aurobindo's dates and mother's dates. Always a difference of 6. Sri Aurobindo was born in 1872, mother's 78. Sri Aurobindo was in August, mother in February, 2 and 8. Sri Aurobindo was born on the 15th. Mother was born on the 21st. 6. Everywhere, 6. I don't know whether the same relation is there at the birth time, because I believe Sri Aurobindo's birth time was 4:30 a.m. and mother says 10:15 a.m., somewhere near that. Sri Aurobindo had cycles of 12 years. I just don't get mother cycles, whether they were of the same. Anyway, that's not very important. And what exactly the significance of this difference of 6, we cannot say with certainty. Mother was asked, why did you take birth in France? We can understand that she was born in the West, Sri Aurobindo was born in the East, and both the traditions had to commingle, combine, fuse for a new order. But then she was asked, why did she choose France? She explained, it was the necessity for culture, for a clear and precise mind, for a refinement of thought and taste, for clarity of mind. Now these are the qualities associated with the French mind. And we know very well how mother had a great passion for precision. She always admired in anybody the quality of precision, clarity. She liked to talk to people or to read writings which were very clear in exposition. She didn't care very much for profound things, but pellucid, clear, transparent, whether it was thinking or thought. And that she felt it was more expressed in the French type than any other. And of course, when Sri Aurobindo was asked whether he loved England, where he stayed for 14 years, he said he was very much influenced by the English traditions, but he always loved France, a country which he had not known, visited in this birth, implying thereby that he had been born there before. These are only interesting sidelights about the background of mother's birth. I mentioned that mother was a child always turned within herself. She was not given very much to play. Mix with other children, though she took care never to appear standoffish. She does not exactly know when her spiritual quest as such started. There were certain stirrings in her being in this direction quite early, But the first notable turn, juncture, which she recollects is that when she was about 5 years old, she used to see, not just feel, but see a light just above her head. It was both a light and a force. Her mother had prepared a small chair for her, and mother would sit on the chair, and when she saw that light, she would feel very happy. She did not know what it was. At that age of 5, she didn't have any clear, her mind was not developed naturally, but she had a vague feeling that it was something great, and that great thing was going to do great things. She always felt very much in affinity with that light, and she would try to draw that down in herself. She would feel very nice about it. Whenever she was unhappy, she was never unhappy for her own reasons. There was nothing in her that could make her unhappy. She had no desires. She had no impulsions needing to be satisfied. But even at that tender age, she was rubbed very wrongly by the behavior of number of people around, including her own near relations. Whenever they told lie, whenever they showed some violence, meanness, anger, any of these movements, she felt depressed, not exactly depressed, she felt hurt. But she did not know why they are doing that. And she would retire, sit in a chair, and seek some kind of guidance from that light. Whenever she turned to that light, which is also a force, she had a very pleasant sensation of something strong and luminous, and a kind of determination formed in her. This is what I must live, what I must be. What is that? She could not define for herself. For her it was that. And she knew that it was bound to do great things. And in trying to understand the littleness of human nature, she sought help from that. She had no inclination for outdoor sports, outdoor activities like other children. Her father, who as I mentioned was very fond of animals and birds, he would offer to take her and the children to the circus on Sundays. But she would show no interest, and she said she had more interesting thing at home. But still she would go. And she recalls how the circus of Buffalo Bill came to Paris in 1889. And she remembers Buffalo Bill because he had a Red Indian companion. And that Red Indian had a capacity, faculty, with which he would amuse the children. And mother was very fascinated by it. He would put his ears to the ground and hear the vibrations of some footsteps. And he would say exactly from what distance the person was coming. He was so much in tune with nature, that Red Indian, and mother considered him as a friend. She had an English governess. Speaking of her with a humorous touch, she mentions how, according to the English, following the English tradition, she would always give and say it is good for children to have a cold bath. But no, you know, in Europe it is so cold. But she would insist that it is good for children to have cold bath. Mother didn't like it very much, but nobody would listen to her. Naturally, children. Till the doctor one day said that cold bath is not good for her. And mother says that she always had a certain antipathy to cold. But it was inevitable. Cold could not be avoided in Europe. And she says till she was 35, till she came to India, she didn't have enough of sun. And when she came to India, she had brought her complete outfit of warm dress, muffler and things like that. And when she came here, there was so much of warmth that she felt for the first time very happy in this regard. She said she felt the Indian sun very comfortable. When she came with such cold. So, we are apt to complain of the sun, always complaining that the sun is too hot, too warm. And it had always been mother's approach that if you make friends with the sun won't harm you. You don't need to cover yourself with a hat or a cap or an umbrella, but you must love the sun, have affinity. she had that love for the sun. I do believe that some in the ashram have been following this direction of Mother, which applies not only to the sun but also to the rain. She said, make friends in the rain. It will not harm you. And there are people here who defy the rain and go without covering umbrella when it is pouring. And I have seen them. They are quite healthy. They don't get fever, they don't get flu the next day. Of course, it depends upon one's constitution and one's faith. Being born in a European family, that too in France, it was inevitable that all used to eat non-vegetarian food. Mother never liked or fancied non-vegetarian food, not because of any principle, she says, but she had a kind of aversion. But she had to eat, she would eat. And it was only by the beginning of this century that she could become a vegetarian. And she was that all her life. Though she had no objections, scruples in letting people have their choice of diet, whether they had vegetarian or non-vegetarian or mixed. She did not pay much attention. In India, we have made a fetish of this kind of choice in food. We mix up religion, spirituality with choice of food. People many times ask whether they have to give up non-veg when they take to yoga. But why? Why should they? She would say, take the food to which your body is accustomed. Don't make a fad of it or a fetish of it. If you feel like changing, you change. But being a vegetarian is not going to make you very spiritual, or eating non-vegetarian food make you unspiritual. What about those who are in the West, who are in America, for instance? The staple food is beef. Now, are they to be denied spiritual consciousness? I have met highly evolved people there, highly gentle. I even observed to some people that you look like Christ. That tenderness, that gentleness, that love effusing from them, not in cities, but in rural areas. And they didn't bother about what they were eating, what was available they would eat. So, when some people, orthodox people who come to our ashram, pretend to get shocked that people take here eggs, people take here fish or other non-veg items, they don't understand that it is not very central. What dress I put on, whether I put on a jubba and a dhoti or jeans and bush coat, or an ochre robe, whatever it is, how does it affect my consciousness? Similarly, what food I eat, it may be a matter of hygiene or health, but nothing to do with spirituality. So she has broken down these kind of superstitious barriers of giving too much attention and importance to external details. But she has wanted to give importance to the consciousness, to the attitude with which you take food, for instance. Do you have greed? Do you have intense seeking for a particular kind of food? Or do you detest food, particular food? Both Sri Aurobindo and Mother would always speak of the Gita ideal of balance. Balance and a certain equality in matters of choice. We have digressed somewhat from our central theme, but we'll return to it next time.